Meanwhile, in the wake of all of this crap that went on over vacation, you've got a guy, and this makes 9/11 look pathetic in its sophistication. A man penetrated the security of Newark Airport, which, if you've never flown in and out of it, is one of the giant airports in the world. It's right across the river from New York. Guy penetrates the security in Newark Airport by walking in through the exit.
Right.
And now can't be located because evidently the exit is, quote, guarded by people who, having seen somebody walk in through it, say, hey, stop him! And then he melts into the crowd.
Right. I flew over the 2-week break after the attempted terrorist attack, so I can tell you the state of our current security. And also, I've got a piece from Christopher Hitchens I want to read a little of to you that I thought was absolutely great as he looks at these sorts of things the way we do.
Nice.
But there was more ridiculousness going on out of our government over the last week or so than I think I've ever seen. It's just embarrassing. We're an embarrassing nation. I don't know if they think we're stupid or we actually are stupid.
A little of both.
Maybe it's a little of both. But stay tuned for those things. You are listening to the Armstrong and Getty Show. This is the Armstrong and Getty Show, and we're glad you joined us. I was actually watching that first Sunday morning after the mostly successful terrorist attack. I was actually watching when our Homeland Security Secretary, Janet Napolitano, said, look, the important thing that Americans must know is the system worked. And I almost shot my television. I was so crazy mad at that. Yeah. I thought, is anybody paying any attention to this? Luckily, many people were paying attention to that. And she had to backtrack off that statement within 24 hours. So she just got lambasted by many people, in columns mostly, for saying something so incredibly childish and stupid.
I find it chilling, though, that she'd even float it.
Right.
You remember when I pointed out a number of months ago, Mayor Daley of Chicago, when they were trying to get the Olympics, said, I want the people of Chicago to know they won't be on the hook for the financing this thing. The government of Chicago will pay for it. And, that's so patently absurd. Of course, it's laughable. But the fact that he actually floated that says something about his perception and Janet Napolitano's perception of how stupid we are and how easily led we are.
And that's why I can't figure out if they think we're stupid and treat us like children, or if we actually are stupid and act like children, and they're just, we're getting the government we deserve. One of those things. Because I only saw one person challenge her on that on broadcast television. Well, and I think that was Jake Tapper, who was filling in for George Stephanopoulos, who said, you keep saying the system worked, but if the bomb, had worked, or if that passenger hadn't attacked the guy, the plane would have blown up. No, look, the important thing is that passengers need to know they are safe. The system worked. She just said it again, like we're all too stupid to figure this out. The system couldn't have worked worse. It didn't work at all. Nope. At all. The only reason the plane didn't come down in pieces with all the people dead is the guy's bomb didn't work. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason. So for you to say the system worked is the stupidest thing. How you don't lose your job over that is beyond me. Yeah. Now, the president had to come out and say the system failed everywhere, and they're going to review it.
All right. She's gone, isn't she? She's got to be gone.
Gotta be. Yeah. Got to be. She couldn't be more incompetent.
Yeah. But that brings me back to my point of how disgusted I was by cable TV when I flipped it on to catch the coverage of this. The reaction within my extended family and friends was immediate, unanimous, and fairly clear on what happened. Her statement, what it means, airport security, blah, blah, blah. And then I flip on the cable news, and it was as if, I was watching frogs discuss this situation from a perspective so completely different from the human perspective that it really didn't apply to mine. It was like studying a different species. And I thought, well, it goes back to what we're always saying. You're right. You look at the world and you think things and you say things to your neighbor, and then you watch the TV and you wonder why they're saying something completely different. You're right. That parallel universe is so full of crap, I'm not sure it serves any purpose.
So I read this piece from Christopher Hitchens while we were on vacation. I thought was really, really good, and I thought I would share with you. He is an Englishman that writes books that I can't read because he's too smart.
Yes.
And if you ever see him on TV, he looks like he spent all night long at a bar and then slept on a park bench and then rolled into the studio.
Yeah, he is completely unreadable.
This is from Christopher Hitchens' piece called, what is the name of this?
People who can do the New York Times crossword puzzle themselves in 15 minutes think Christopher Hitchens is unreadable.
I really like this. I hope you enjoy it. It's getting to the point where the twin news stories more or less write themselves. No sooner is the fanatical and homicidal Muslim arrested than it turns out that he, it won't be long until it is she, has been known to the authorities for a long time, but somehow the watch list, the tip-off, the many worried reports from colleagues and relatives, the placing of the name on a central repository of information don't prevent the suspect from boarding a plane, changing planes, or bringing whatever he cares to bring onto a plane. This is now a tradition that stretches back to several of the murderers who boarded a civilian aircraft on September 11th, having called attention to themselves by either A, being on a watch list already, or B, weird behavior at Heartland American flight schools. They didn't even bother to change their names. So that's now more or less the routine for the guilty. But flick your eye across the page or down it, and you will instantly see a different imperative for the innocent. New restrictions quickly added for travelers, reads the inevitable headline just below the report on the notoriety of Abdul Muttalib, is that how you say his name? Mm-hmm. Whose own father had been sufficiently alarmed to report his son to the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria some time ago. By the way, I make a safe prediction. Nobody in that embassy or anywhere else in our national security system will lose his or her job as a consequence of this most recent disgrace.
Amen to that.
So far, that's always been the case.
Not even up to the top where a moron presides.
Christopher Hitchens goes on to say, in my boyhood, there were signs on English buses that declared in bold letters, no spitting. At a tender age, I was able to work out that most people don't need to be told this, while those that do feel a desire to expectorate on public transport will require more discouragement than a mere sign. But I'd be wasting my time pointing that out to our majestic and sleepless protectors, who now boldly propose to prevent airline passengers from getting out of their seats for the last hour of any flight.
Oh, God.
Abdul Muttalib made his bid in the last hour of his flight, after all. Yes, that ought to do it. It's also incredibly, nay, almost diabolically clever of our guardians to let it be known what the precise time limit will be. Oh, and by the way, any passenger courageous or resourceful enough to stand up and fight back will also have broken the brave new law. For some years after 9/11, passengers
Again, for people just tuning in, the immediate, unprompted reaction of my 10-year-old was, couldn't the terrorists just get up like an hour and 10 minutes before the end of the flight?
Or blow it up on takeoff, or blow it up in the middle of the flight.
Right. Or
which is obvious to anyone.
He needs water to set off his bomb. He'll get it half an hour earlier and then sit there with it for half an hour. You freaking idiots!
It's not even worth discussing. It's so stupid.
Meanwhile, back at Christopher Hitchens.
For some years after 9/11, passengers were forbidden to get up and use the lavatory on the Washington-New York shuttle. Zero tolerance. I suppose it must have eventually occurred to somebody that this ban would not deter a person who was willing to die, so the rule was scrapped.
But that's a good point.
But now the principle has been revisited.
I am willing to slaughter the hundreds, but I am not willing to break the rule of the stewardess.
Right. But now the principle has been revisited for international flights. For many years after the explosion of TW plane over Long Island, you could not board an aircraft without being asked whether you had packed your own bags and had them under your control at all times. We all remember those stupid questions.
Sure I have, infidel.
These two questions are the very ones to which a would-be hijacker or bomber would honestly and logically have to answer yes, but answering yes to both was a condition of being allowed on the plane. Eventually, that heroic piece of stupidity was dropped as well. But now fresh idiocies are in store, nothing in your lap during the final approach. Do you feel safer? If you were a suicide killer, would you feel thwarted or deterred? Why do we all fail to detect or defeat the guilty, and why do we do so well at collective punishment of the innocent?
Amen to that! On the other hand...
He goes on that vein.
Well, feel free to keep going. I'm enjoying it. On the other hand, Jack, in fairness, there is this opinion.
The system worked.
Yeah, I like that clip. We ought to play that to start every show and end every show.
The system worked.
Until she is gone.
Yes.
The idea that we have any sort of homeland security is laughable. It is laughable. I'm perplexed by this. I really don't understand it. I wish somebody would do a PhD level study of this. Our government and the media together. How how people were going on television. I saw this on many different newscasts where you'd have a reporter at an airport saying, now new security provisions say you will not be allowed to get up the last hour of the flight or have a blanket in your lap. Jim? And then the Jim back at the studio would say, thank you, I guess these times calls for difficult measures, or that sort of thing.
Right, yeah.
No, nobody would say, well, that makes no sense. You'll just blow up the plane an hour and 15 minutes before the end of the flight. Or instead of having it under a blanket, you'll have it under your jacket. I mean, that makes no sense. That won't accomplish anything. Nobody said that. Not a single human being reacted.
It's just horrifying.
So what's going on there? How do you explain this?
That's like I said, it's like listening to animals discuss poetry. I share nothing with them.